Hey folks, Randy Go, Trout Magnet Man with you here today. Today folks, I'm just going to have a little short video about jig heads. For those of you who follow the channel, you know for years, several years now, all I've fished with is Daiwa Gekkabijin SS jig heads. The SS stands for success for those of you who don't know. And what a success jig head is, it has a success hook. Now Daiwa also makes several of their lures with success hooks, and I got some of them up here on my lure board, specifically trout spoons. And let me tell you, a success chemically sharpened hook, it's outstanding. You can't beat it. Unfortunately, Daiwa quit making the Daiwa Gekkabijin success hooks. Now, what they've got out to replace it, and they've had it out for about, I don't know how long they've had it out. I just bought some here recently. They've got the Daiwa Gekkabijin success hook. It's called SSTG. The TG stands for tungsten. Now, let me tell you something. If you can get your hands on some of them jig heads, you'll thank me. Those jig heads are outstanding. I absolutely love them. They are much more sensitive than lead. I mean, by far more sensitive than lead. You think, well, maybe a little bit. No, it's a whole lot. And this is good tungsten. This ain't like a lot of U.S. market tungsten that you get in the ultralight lures. It's not good tungsten. It doesn't weigh much, and the density's not much more than lead. Whereas this stuff's the real deal. And absolutely love them. Now, I don't have many. I've only got about 100. You say that's a lot. Well, no, it's not a lot. If you fish a lot, it's not a lot because you're going to lose them. And that's another thing. They are on the expensive side. Figure out $1. I'm going to say with shipping, depending on how many you get, they're probably $1.50 a jig head. I've already lost, I think I lost 2 or 3 on my 3 bluegill trips. But hey, that's okay. That's part of it. That's part of fishing. And I want to fish with good gear. I want to fish with some good stuff. And when I mean good stuff, I mean stuff that really performs. And these things perform outstanding. The hookup rate is, it's off the charts good. And fish stay buttoned up with the success hooks. They got a micro barb on them. And it's extremely rare for me to lose a fish using a success hook. I mean, it hardly ever happens. And I absolutely love the stuff. But if you can get some of those hooks, I highly recommend it. Now, some people have asked, what size jig head do you use? And I need to answer that question that was put on one of my videos. For years and years, I used a 1.5 gram jig head back in Tennessee when I was fishing the Nickajack Lake. And I fished Center Hill Lake, fished Laurel Hill Lake. The main reason I used a 1.5 was on account of Nickajack. I fished the mooring cells a lot at Nickajack, and the water there around the mooring cells can be anywhere from 19 to 22, 23, 24, even up to 25 feet, depending on how much water they're letting out or how much water is backed up from Gunnersville. So I needed to get down relatively deep and get a trout magnet down. And you know, that's another thing. I don't like going above 1.5 grams using the trout magnet because it takes the action off the lure. And believe it or not, the trout magnet does have some action. But getting a 1/64 ounce jig head down to 23, 24 feet, especially with nylon line, that ain't gonna happen, folks. That ain't gonna happen. I was down there one day with my son. We had everything the same. Jig heads were the same. Everything was the same except one thing. I had on ester line, which sinks. He had on monofilament line, which does not sink. It has a specific gravity of 1, I think it is. I was catching fish after fish after fish. The reason being, I would count mine down to the bottom, but when I worked it back, I could keep it on the bottom because the ester line would allow it to sink back pretty darn quick. Whereas my son, using a nylon line, even though he had on the same size jig head as I did, he never really got it back down there to where those Kentucky bass were at, and that was the difference. But the jig heads, I mean, once you've used this stuff, you don't want to go back, and I do not want to go back. Now, Victor has sent me some jig heads, I fish, that I'm going to try out. Now, Victor's jig heads, I can tell you right now, they have a sharp hook. It's a Japanese hook. It's not as sharp as a success, but I got a lot of Japanese stuff that the hook is not as sharp as a success. That's the sharpest hook I've run up on in my JDM tackle search, and I've got, I've got all kinds of jig heads over there. I've got the AGI Killer. I've got the Gamakatsu Lux, which, by the way, the Gamakatsu Lux is a darn good hook. Now, it's pretty close to the Success. It's almost right there, but it has a very short shank hook. The tungsten Success hooks, number 6 and number 8, they have a long enough shank where the trout magnet fits on there perfectly. You ain't got to make any adjustments. You can get it on there, come out through the tail. It's on there straight, and that's a good thing. But that's the jig head I prefer to use. Now I've got probably, I don't know, I've got several hundred. Well, no, I probably only got about 100 of the weights I use in the old lead Success Gekkabijin jig heads, and I will use them. But tungsten, boy, once you use it and with a good hook, you just don't want to go back to nothing else. So that's the jig head I use. That's the one I prefer to use. And I've tried there's another Daiwa jig head that's tungsten called the Gekkabijin. Well, the problem with that, it has an open gate, and it's not a Success hook. It's sharp, but it's not as sharp as a Success. And it's got an open gate. Now what that means is the bend is pointed a little bit slightly upwards, the point of the hook, so that they can get a quick hookup rate, which evidently for horse mackerel, they want that. With bluegill, what I found with that, with open gate hooks, bluegill can suck it in so quick. When they get on the hook, that lure is so far down their throat, now they're gut hooked. And I don't like that. I mean, gut hook's gonna happen no matter what jig head you use every now and then. But with those open gate hooks, the gut hooking happens quite a bit. So anyway, folks, if you can get you some Gekkabijin tungsten Success jig heads, they're called Gekkabijin SS TG. I will put a link in the description of those jig heads. Digitaka does have some. How long they'll have them, I don't know, because they're out of certain weights, but they got some 1.25s, they got some 1.5s, I think it is. But going farther here, going into the future here for these bluegill, I would probably use a 1 gram tungsten jig head because I don't really need the 1.5 over there. I'm going to be fishing in waters where these bluegill are on bed, 2 to 4 to 5 feet tops. So I don't really need a 1.5 gram. The reason I fished a 1.5 gram, as I said before, was fishing the tail race at Nickajack. It's deep water. I needed something to get a trout magnet down. So anyway, folks, hope all of you are safe. Hope all of you are healthy. Hope you're out fishing. Hope you're catching a bunch of fish. So until next time, soar live them all, and life is good.